Hi there, welcome to Gaining Vision. I'm Melanie. Thanks so much for clicking. To my returning subscribers, thank you for your continuous love and support. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please feel at home. Have you had an opportunity to hit that subscribe button yet? If not, do me a favor, take a second, hit subscribe, and please don't forget to like and share. As the United Nations General Assembly comes to a close, I've been taking time to reflect on a lot of the speeches that were given. There were some really powerful ones. And as I mentioned in my previous video, the African leaders really represented well this time around. And in fact, so much so that I can tell you that the Western leaders are shaking in their boots. They're finally starting to see what African leaders really are bringing to the table. And that is telling the truth. When I heard the president of Ghana give his speech, I was in awe because he spoke the hard truth. He laid it out for people, whether they wanted to hear it or not. He said that African people gave their blood, sweat, and tears to help the US and Europe develop. And it's time to pay it up. And
it is time to acknowledge openly that much of Europe and the United States have been built from the vast wealth harvested from the sweat, tears, blood, and horrors of the transatlantic slave trade and the centuries of colonial exploitation. Maybe we should also admit that it cannot be easy to build confident and prosperous societies from nations that for centuries have their natural resources looted and their peoples traded as commodities. For centuries, the world has been unwilling and unable to confront the realities of the consequences of the slave trade. But gradually, this is changing, and it is time to bring the subject of reparations firmly to the fore. Granted, the current generations are not the ones that engaged in the slave trade, but that grand inhuman enterprise was state-sponsored and deliberate, and its benefits are clearly interwoven with the present-day economic architecture of the nations that designed and executed it. Reparations must be paid for the slave trade. No amount of money will ever make up for the horrors, but it would make the point that evil was perpetrated, that millions of productive Africans were snatched from the embrace of our continent and put to work in the Americas and the Caribbean without compensation for their labor. If there are any hesitations in some minds about the paying of reparations, it is worth considering the fact that when slavery was abolished, the slave owners were compensated for the loss of the slaves because the human beings were labeled as property, deemed to be commodities. Surely, this is a matter that the world must confront and can no longer ignore. It's probably also the time to return to that vexed subject of illicit financial outflows out of the continent of Africa. I refer to the report of the panel chaired by the highly respected former South African President Thabo Mbeki on the illicit flow of funds from Africa, which states that Africa is losing annually more than 88 billion United States dollars through illicit financial outflows. Yes, those monies too must be returned to the continent.
And you know what? He went on and talked about so many incredible topics in this speech, including the fact that it is important not only for leaders of Africa, but leaders across the globe to see the need for reform in the UN security. They've been talking about this since 2017.
We've witnessed it firsthand, over and over again, that the big powers of the United Nations might be preaching democracy, fairness, and justice around the world, but are happy to practice the opposite here at the United Nations, prioritizing parochial interests over those of humanity. Back in 2017, the first time I addressed the General Assembly as President of my country, I spoke at length on the need to reform of the United Nations and of the Security Council in particular. I said then that the urgent need to reform this organization had been talked about and scheduled for a long time, but somehow we've never found the courage and the will to execute it. I said then that Ghana supports UN reform, especially of the Security Council, as set out in Africa's common position on UN reform, based on the Eswatini Consensus.
And the president of Ghana spoke specifically that he brought this up in 2017. There needs to be change. There needs to be power given to the veto holders. And the people and the leaders that have the veto power need to step up and take action when conflict like the Ukraine and Russia war is happening. He talked about the changes that need to happen in many areas, but is committed Ghana to continuing on this mission. But as he spoke with passion, articulation, and confidence, he was calm, cool, and collective, letting people know that he knew exactly what he was talking about. And he was speaking on behalf of all of Africa. It was powerful. And I want you to take a listen to what he had to say.
The mutual trust among nations that is required to ensure harmony has considerably diminished. The cohesion that we need to build the peace and prosperity of our societies is disintegrating and nearing Cold War lows. We do not seem to have any common values on which we can all agree, nor common goals to which we all aspire. The fault lines are not just between poor and rich, or the South and North, or the developed and developing countries. Even within well-established and rich countries, the tensions over trade, climate, political boundaries, and geopolitical spheres of influence are palpable. Long-held definitions are being challenged, and sacred truths and beliefs are being questioned or discarded outright. And in some instances, the deliberate peddling of blatant untruths has become acceptable. This organization, the United Nations, under whose auspices we, the nations of the world, are gathered for the annual review of the world, was established in the belief that our common humanity would be the overriding consideration in dealing with the problems that would invariably arise when we deal with one another. There is no doubt that the organization has achieved a great deal in its 78 years of existence, of which we can all be justifiably proud.
What did you think? Wasn't it great? Like, I actually got goosebumps. I'm like, finally, somebody is telling them what they need to hear. For too long, African leaders have shied away from speaking up, and Western leaders have not listened. The United Nations needs to take a stand and give Africa the seats at the table at the United Nations they deserve to have. They need to be an active member of every committee so that they can see a perspective and hear the hard truth continuously. And I encourage other African leaders to follow suit of the president of Ghana, because we need to hear this more often on different world platforms. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on what he has said in his speech and your perspectives. Drop them in the comments below. And please don't forget to hit that notification button. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.